The vast, unforgiving Kansas prairie of 1888, where every sunrise brought a fresh battle for survival. Against this stark backdrop, a lone pregnant woman and her 2 small children faced destitution, their last threads of hope slowly unraveling. Then an apparition, a man bullet-ridden and on the brink of death, collapsed at their humble doorstep. They were presented with a stark choice: turn him away and preserve their meager existence, or extend an act of sanctuary to a stranger who could be either a menace or a miracle. They chose compassion, unaware that this dying cowboy, a figure shrouded in a past darker than the midnight sky, was about to ignite a spark that would not only rescue their tiny family, but forever redraw the map of their destiny. The wind, a constant mournful companion, railed against the fragile clapboard shack, whistling through the cracks like a lament for forgotten dreams. Serena Miller. Her belly, swollen with the promise of new life, shivered, pulling her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. Outside, the early spring sun, weak and watery, did little to thaw the lingering chill that seeped into the very bones of the Kansas prairie. It was 1888, and life on her desolate homestead, miles from the nearest semblance of civilization, was a brutal, relentless master. Her 2 children, Eliza, a quiet, observant girl of 8, and Thomas, a boisterous, perpetually hungry 6-year-old, huddled near the meager fire in the hearth. The smell of boiling potatoes, their staple, was thin in the air, doing little to mask the scent of dust and desperation that permeated their lives. Since her husband Samuel had succumbed to the typhoid 2 years prior, leaving her with a heavily mortgaged patch of land and 2 gaping mouths to feed, Serena had become a master of grim arithmetic. Every sack of flour, every nail, every seed packet was a calculation of survival, a prayer whispered into the vast, indifferent sky. This spring, the calculation looked particularly bleak. The winter had been harsh, claiming their last cow, and a late frost had threatened the small patch of corn she had meticulously planted. Without a good harvest, without anything to sell in Fort Hays, their future was a precipice. The mortgage payment due in late autumn loomed like a thunderhead. "Mama, can I have more?" Thomas asked, his voice bright, oblivious to the storm clouds gathering on his mother's brow. He held out his dented tin plate, scraped clean. Serena forced a smile, a practiced art of deception. "Soon, sweetheart. We need to save some for supper." She glanced at Eliza, whose eyes, too wise for her years, held a flicker of understanding. Eliza knew the lean times. She remembered the warmth of her father's laughter, the way his strong hands had eased their burdens. Now only her mother's weary resilience remained. Serena's gaze drifted towards the horizon, a boundless expanse of undulating grass. It was a familiar ritual, a search for anything out of the ordinary, a sign, a miracle. Today, however, her eyes caught something. A dark, still mass near the ancient cottonwood tree that marked the edge of their property, perhaps a quarter-mile distant. It hadn't been there yesterday. "Eliza Thomas," she said, her voice low, a ripple of unease in its tone. "Stay inside. Don't go near the door." Her heart thumped against her ribs. Rustlers, outlaws. The prairie was a lonely place, but never truly empty. Danger like the wind could spring up from anywhere. She grabbed the old shotgun. Samuel's shotgun from its place above the doorframe. It felt heavy and cold in her hands, a stark reminder of her new unwanted responsibilities. She was not a woman of violence, but she was a mother. Stepping onto the small porch, Serena peered through the swirling dust. The shape resolved itself. It wasn't a fallen tree limb, nor a stray buffalo. It was a horse, its head drooping and slumped beside it, a man. He lay utterly motionless, a dark stain spreading across the back of his worn leather vest. A surge of conflicting emotions warred within her fear-caution, and then an overwhelming wave of raw human compassion. He was clearly wounded, perhaps dying. She couldn't leave him. Not like this. Not on her land. "Stay here," she called over her shoulder to the children, who now pressed their faces against the single glass pane of the window. She began to walk slowly at first, then picking up speed, the heavy shotgun feeling strangely light, a mere formality. As she drew closer, the scene sharpened into agonizing detail. The horse, a magnificent roan, stood with one leg bent at an unnatural angle, its eyes wide with pain and exhaustion. The man was worse. He lay face down, his right arm twisted beneath him, a dark, viscous pool soaking into the dry earth beneath his chest. His clothes were of good quality, but travel-worn. A broad-brimmed hat lay discarded beside him, revealing a shock of dark, matted hair. A gun belt, empty save for a few cartridges, was cinched around his waist. Serena knelt, her breath catching in her throat. His breathing was shallow, ragged, a desperate whisper against the vast silence. She gently rolled him onto his back. His face, though streaked with dirt and blood, was strong, etched with lines that spoke of a hard life and oddly a profound weariness. His eyes, when they fluttered open for a split second, were the color of storm clouds. "Water," he rasped, his voice a barely audible croak. Serena glanced at the injured horse. It was beyond saving. A mercy shot would be needed later. But the man, he had a chance, a slim one, but a chance. "Eliza Thomas, get me water and the clean cloths. Hurry," she yelled, her voice breaking with urgency. The children, their initial fear replaced by a strange fascination, sprinted back to the shack. Returning moments later, Eliza clutching a bucket of well water, Thomas dragging a stack of old flour sacks. Serena so carefully poured a little water onto the man's cracked lips. He coughed a painful, shuddering sound, but managed to swallow. His skin was cold, clammy. The bullet wound high on his back was still bleeding sluggishly. "We have to get him inside," she murmured, more to herself than to the children. "It's too cold out here." It was a monumental task. The man was heavy, dead weight. But desperation lent her strength, with Eliza pulling at his good arm and Thomas pushing at his boots. Serena heaved and pulled inch by agonizing inch towards the shack. It was a slow, painful crawl, punctuated by grunts of effort and the man's occasional pained moan. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they dragged him across the threshold and onto the rough plank floor near the hearth. His heavy leather chaps scraped against the wood. Serena immediately set to work. She heated water, tearing strips from an old linen sheet for bandages. Eliza, surprisingly calm, helped holding the lamp steady, fetching what her mother asked for. Thomas, though a little squeamish, watched with wide, curious eyes. As Serena cut away his shirt, she discovered another wound, a long, ugly gash along his left side, likely from a knife or a fall. But it was the bullet wound that truly concerned her. It was deep, dangerously close to his spine. "Mama, will he die?" Thomas whispered, his voice barely audible. Serena dabbed at the blood, her hands trembling. "I don't know, son. We have to try. He's got a strong heart." She spoke with more conviction than she felt. He was barely breathing. She cleaned the wounds as best she could, pouring a precious amount of their salvaged whiskey over them to sterilize. The man, even in his unconscious state, flinched violently. He began to murmur incoherent words, fragments of names she couldn't discern. Serena. No. Not like this. Then a name clearer this time. Silas. Silas. She would call him Silas. For days he hovered on the brink. Serena nursed him with a fierce determination, born of loneliness and a deep-seated belief in the sanctity of life. She brewed bitter herbal teas, changed his bandages, and spoon-fed him thin broth. She prayed over him, her voice raw with unaccustomed pleas. The children watched their lives now centered around the strange, wounded man who lay silent and still in their small home. Eliza, ever the observer, would sometimes sit quietly beside him, tracing patterns on the floor with her finger, as if trying to decipher the mystery he represented. Thomas, less patient, would ask constantly, "Is he awake yet? Can he play?" Slowly, agonizingly. Silas began to mend. The fever broke, his breathing deepened. One morning, Serena found his storm-cloud eyes open, clear and unfocused, staring at the ceiling. "Water," he croaked again. A little stronger this time. Serena rushed to his side, offering the cup. He drank deeply, greedily. His eyes, still wary, found hers. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice rough, unused. It was the first word she had heard from him that made sense. It was the beginning of something, though she couldn't yet imagine what. All she knew was that she had saved a life, a stranger, and in doing so had unwittingly brought a force into her isolated world that would challenge everything she thought she knew about survival, about hope, and about the unpredictable nature of destiny. She didn't know he was a renowned outlaw, John Blackwood, the fastest gun in the West, betrayed and left for dead by his own crew. She knew nothing of the bounty on his head, nor the trail of desperate men who would follow it. She knew only that a dying cowboy lay in her home, and his presence, though a burden, also felt like a peculiar, unsettling gift. Silas's recovery was a slow, uneven climb. Each day brought a new struggle, a new threshold of pain to cross. He was a man of few words, his silence often more profound than any speech. Serena learned to read the subtle shifts in his demeanor, the tightening of his jaw, the slight furrow of his brow. He never complained, never asked for anything, and seemed almost ashamed of his helplessness. As his strength returned, so too did a restless energy. He couldn't sit still for long. His eyes, constantly scanning, observed everything. The rickety table, the leaky roof, the way Thomas scraped his knee, Eliza's quiet diligence. He was like a hawk, perpetually vigilant, even when confined to their small cabin. One afternoon, a few weeks after he'd stirred to consciousness, Serena found him outside, leaning heavily against the doorframe, his gaze fixed on the broken fence line of the corral. "That won't hold a calf, let alone a horse," he rasped, his voice still hoarse. Serena sighed, running a hand through her tired hair. "I know. Samuel was going to fix it. I just haven't had the strength or the wood." Without a word, Silas pushed off the doorframe, still unsteady on his feet. He picked up an axe, leaning against the shack, testing its weight. "Show me where you keep the good timber," he said, his tone flat, a statement, not a question. Serena stared. He was still weak, barely able to walk without a tremor. "Silas, you're not well enough." He merely grunted a dismissive sound. "Idle hands invite trouble." And so piece by painstaking piece, Silas began to work. He moved slowly at first, wincing with every swing of the axe, but his movements, though labored, held an innate precision. He knew wood. He knew how to measure, how to cut, how to make things hold. Within days, the fence was not merely repaired, but reinforced, stronger than before. He even built a new gate, its hinges creaking smoothly, a testament to his quiet skill. His hands, she noticed, though calloused and scarred, were surprisingly nimble. He could fix anything, a loose board on the floor, the hinge of a cupboard, the squeaking wheel of their ancient wagon. He taught Thomas how to whittle small figures from scraps of wood, his large, rough fingers guiding the boy's smaller ones with surprising gentleness. He showed Eliza how to mend a torn piece of canvas with strong, invisible stitches. Slowly, tentatively, he began to fill the vast, silent void Samuel had left. The children, initially wary, began to adore him. Thomas would follow him everywhere, asking endless questions. Eliza, ever more reserved, would bring him drawings she had made, or quietly leave him a cup of coffee near his bedroll by the fire. She even started calling him Uncle Silas. Serena found herself watching him, a strange, unfamiliar warmth unfurling in her chest. He was a stranger, yes, but he was becoming indispensable. His presence, while still a mystery, was also a comfort. One sweltering afternoon, as Silas sat on the porch mending a bridle, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon, growing steadily larger. Serena's heart leaped into her throat. Riders. Always riders. It was never good news. 3 men, grim-faced and dusty, pulled up to the shack. Their horses snorted restless. The lead man, a burly figure with a handlebar mustache and a badge pinned to his grimy vest, dismounted. "Marshal Thompson," he announced, his voice gruff, his eyes sweeping over the property. Missing nothing. "We're looking for a man. Tall, dark hair, answers to Blackwood. Word has it he was seen headed this way after a run-in near Dodge City." Serena felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Blackwood. Not Silas. She looked at the man on her porch who had gone utterly still, his eyes now sharp, predatory. He had picked up the shotgun, holding it casually, but with an unspoken threat in his grip. "There's no one here by that name, Marshal," Serena said, her voice strained but firm. "Just me and my children, and my cousin, Silas." Marshal Thompson's gaze narrowed. "Cousin A, funny, he looks a lot like a certain John Blackwood. There's a bounty on Blackwood's head, ma'am. A hefty one, for stagecoach robbery and murder." Serena's blood ran cold. Murder. She glanced at Silas, whose face remained impassive, betraying nothing. The children, sensing the tension, had retreated inside, peering out through the window. "He's been here for weeks," Serena insisted, clutching the front of her dress. "He was badly wounded when he arrived. Couldn't even speak. He's been recovering." Marshal Thompson stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Silas. "Well now, Silas, is it? You seem to be recovering mighty fine. That a bullet wound I see under that shirt, cousin." Silas slowly rose, his movements deliberate, controlled. He met the marshal's gaze, his eyes like chipped flint. "It was an accident, Marshal. Fell off my horse in a ravine. Got tangled in some barbed wire." He nodded towards the repaired fence. "Serena here found me." The marshal scoffed, but his men shifted uneasily. The way Silas held the shotgun, the quiet intensity in his gaze, spoke of a man who knew how to use it. And Serena, this small, pregnant woman, stood by him with a defiance that was unexpected. "All right, Silas," Marshal Thompson said, a grudging respect in his voice. "We'll be moving on. But if we hear anything at all about John Blackwood being sheltered here, you'll both be swinging from the gallows." He spat on the ground, then turned and mounted his horse, his men following suit. They rode off, leaving a trail of dust and a lingering chill. When they were gone, Serena turned to Silas, her face pale. "Who are you?" she whispered the question, a desperate plea. Silas finally lowered the shotgun. He looked at her, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "My name is John Blackwood Serena," he said, his voice quiet, devoid of bravado. "And the marshal wasn't entirely wrong. I am an outlaw, or I was." He paused, his eyes drifting towards the distant horizon. "But not a murderer. Not that kind of murderer. There's a story to it, a long one, and it's not for little ears." He glanced towards the window where Eliza and Thomas were still watching. Serena hugged herself, trying to make sense of the maelstrom of emotions swirling within her. Fear, betrayal, but beneath it all, a strange sense of understanding. He had protected her, stood by her. He had lied to save them all. "You have to go," she said, though her heart ached at the thought. "You can't stay here. It's too dangerous for the children." Silas walked over to her, his gaze intense. "And leave you alone with a bounty on my head, and men like Thompson looking for me. They'll be back. They'll know I was here. This place ain't safe for you without someone to watch your back." He gestured vaguely to the vast, empty prairie. "You saved my life, Serena. I won't leave you to face this alone. Not now." His words, raw and honest, resonated with a truth she couldn't deny. He was right. Their quiet, isolated life was over. The marshal's visit had shattered that illusion. But with Silas John Blackwood here, there was a different kind of danger, and a different kind of protection. Days turned into weeks. Silas, now openly acknowledged, as John Blackwood between them, moved with a newfound ease, though still wary. He was a phantom, a whisper from the past living in the present. He taught Serena how to handle the shotgun properly, how to track, how to read the subtle signs of the prairie. He worked tirelessly, fixing everything that was broken, preparing the homestead for winter with a meticulousness that surprised her. He harvested their meager corn crop with grim efficiency, his hands once used for quick draws, now gentle with the stalks. The children still called him Uncle Silas, oblivious to the deeper truth, and he played along, his rare smiles reserved for them. He had a way with horses, calming even the most skittish, and soon he brought back 2 wild mustangs he had tamed from the nearby plains, sturdy beasts that would be invaluable for ploughing and travel. Serena found herself relying on him, trusting him in ways she never imagined she would, a stranger, especially one with such a dark past. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and he was strong, capable, and fiercely protective. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forged in shared danger and quiet resilience. She had saved his life, and he in turn was saving hers, piece by painstaking piece. But the whispers persisted. Sometimes when a lone rider passed their homestead, a shadow would fall across Silas's face. He would become uncharacteristically tense, his hand hovering near the revolver. He now wore a silent warning. Serena knew deep in her gut that the fragile peace they had found was merely a lull before the storm. His past was a coiled rattlesnake waiting to strike, and when it did, she knew their lives would be forever altered for better or for worse. She just hoped they would survive it. The Kansas summer burned with an intensity that sucked the moisture from the air and cracked the parched earth. Serena's pregnancy advanced, bringing with it increasing discomfort and a heightened sense of vulnerability. Her due date was fast approaching, and the nearest doctor was a day's ride away in Fort Hayes, an impossible journey in her condition. Silas, sensing her growing anxiety, had begun to prepare. He fashioned a makeshift birthing bed in a corner of the cabin, stocked extra clean linens, and even tried to concoct a pain-relieving brew from local herbs, though his efforts were more comical than effective. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and violet, a dust cloud larger and more ominous than any they had seen appeared on the western horizon. This wasn't a lone rider, or even a small patrol. This was a force. Silas, who had been sitting on the porch, whittling a small wooden horse for Thomas, dropped his knife. His face, usually an unreadable mask, tightened into a grim line. "Get the children inside, Serena," he said, his voice low and urgent. "And stay hidden, no matter what." Serena didn't argue. She knew this was it. The past, coiled and waiting, had finally struck. She herded Eliza and Thomas into the small root cellar beneath the cabin, a dark, damp space they used for storing vegetables. "Stay quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't make a sound." She emerged to find Silas standing on the porch, the shotgun in his hands, his revolver gleaming in its holster. He looked every inch the outlaw Marshal Thompson had described, formidable and dangerous. "Who is it, John?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a desperate weariness. "Men I rode with, or thought I did. Bartholomew Crowley and his crew." He swallowed, his gaze hardening. "They left me for dead, Serena. Thought they'd cleaned out the Fort Hayes bank, and then got rid of the loose end." The dust cloud resolved into a dozen riders, hardened men with grim faces and cold eyes. They pulled up short of the shack, their horses snorting and stamping. The lead rider, a hulking man with a scarred face and a cruel smile, was Bartholomew Crowley. He dismounted, his gaze sweeping over Silas, then landing on Serena, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "Well, well, Blackwood," Crowley sneered, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Looks like the vultures didn't get their fill after all. Heard you were still kicking, and with a pretty little widow for company, no less, and pregnant. My, how domestic." He winked at his men, who snickered. Silas took a step forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Serena. "You want me, Bart? Leave her out of it." Crowley laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Oh, but she's part of the package now, ain't she? You got a soft spot, Blackwood. Always did. That's why you were the patsy. Took the fall for the bank job while we rode off with the gold." Serena's mind reeled. The bank job, the murder Marshal Thompson mentioned. "There was no murder, Bart," Silas said, his voice steely. "You shot the guard, not me. I tried to stop you." Crowley merely shrugged. "Details, details. The law don't care who pulled the trigger when the whole crew's involved. But that's not why we're here, Blackwood. We're here for what you took." "I didn't take anything," Silas retorted. "You rode off. I was bleeding in the street." "The maps, Blackwood," Crowley roared, his face twisting in a snarl. "The maps to the old Spanish mine. You always had 'em, didn't you? The ones Jedediah Stone gave you before he died. You led us to the bank as a diversion. You were playing us the whole time." Silas. John Blackwood stood silent for a moment, then let out a low, bitter laugh. "So that's it. The mine. You greedy bastards. Jedediah trusted me with those maps to keep them safe from men like you. They belong to his family, not a gang of killers. A sudden realization struck Serena like a physical blow. The old prospector, Jedediah Stone. She remembered him. He had been a kind, eccentric man, known for his fantastical tales of lost gold mines. Samuel had scoffed, but Jedediah had always sworn they were real, and he had died suddenly, a few months before Samuel. Rumor was he'd been attacked. "So you were protecting the maps," Serena murmured, looking at Silas, a new layer of understanding dawning. "Protecting them, and trying to leave that life behind." Silas confirmed, his eyes fixed on Crowley. "But you found me anyway." Crowley pulled out his own revolver, cocking it with a menacing click. "Enough talk. Where are they, Blackwood, or the woman and her brats pay the price?" Silas didn't hesitate. "They're hidden, and you won't get them. Not unless you go through me." The standoff was palpable, heavy, with unspoken threats and the scent of dust and fear. Suddenly, from inside the root cellar, Thomas let out a small, muffled cry. A mouse had probably startled him. Crowley's eyes darted to the small wooden door of the cellar. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Are the little lambs? Looks like you've got more than just a pregnant widow to protect, Blackwood." He gestured to two of his men. "Gideon Lars, check that cellar. Bring out the little ones." Silas roared, a sound of pure fury. He raised the shotgun, but before he could fire, Crowley's men opened fire. Bullets splintered the porch railing, kicking up dust around Silas. He dove for cover, returning fire with his revolver, forcing the men to scatter. Serena, terrified, but propelled by a primal urge to protect her children, knew she couldn't stay on the porch. She grabbed the rifle that Silas had leaned against the wall, a powerful Winchester, and without a moment's hesitation, aimed at Gideon, who was trying to pry open the cellar door. Her shot went wide, kicking up dirt near his feet, but it was enough to make him jump back in surprise. "The woman's got a gun!" he yelled. "She won't shoot straight," Crowley yelled back, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The homestead erupted into a chaotic symphony of gunfire shouts and the terrified whinnies of horses. Silas moved with a deadly grace, a blur of motion, firing, reloading, taking cover. He was a force of nature, protecting his newfound family. But there were too many of them. A bullet grazed Silas's arm, making him grunt in pain. Another splintered the doorframe near Serena's head. She ducked her heart, hammering. The cellar door was creaking. Gideon was about to break it open. "The old well," Silas shouted. His voice strained. "The dry well, northwest side," Serena understood. He meant the maps. He was giving them up to save the children. She scrambled around the side of the house, clutching the rifle, running towards the old, disused well. A dark hole covered by loose boards. Crowley, seeing her move, let out a triumphant yell. "She's got them, get her!" Serena tore away the rotten planks, revealing the dark abyss. She peered down. No, not down. He meant hidden near it. Her eyes scanned the ground. A loose stone, slightly larger than the others, caught her attention. She scrabbled at it, digging with her fingers, ignoring the splinters and dirt. Beneath the stone, wrapped in oilskin, was a small leather-bound satchel. Her fingers closed around it. Just as she pulled it free, a rough hand grabbed her arm. It was Gideon. "Gotcha, little lady," he snarled, twisting her arm. He tried to snatch the satchel, but Serena, fueled by adrenaline and the fierce protectiveness of a mother, kicked him hard in the shin. He yelped, loosening his grip. She pulled free, throwing the satchel as far as she could, towards the main confrontation. "The satchel!" she screamed. "He hid it! It's the maps!" Silas, seeing the satchel fly, reacted instinctively. He ducked, a bullet rolled and fired, hitting one of Crowley's men in the shoulder. The man staggered, and Silas used the distraction to lunge for the satchel. Crowley, enraged, aimed his revolver directly at Serena. "You bitch!" he snarled. But before he could fire, a shot rang out from an unexpected direction. Not Silas's gun, not Crowley's men. From the thicket of brush near the creek. Crowley gasped, a look of shocked disbelief on his face, as a red stain bloomed on his chest. He stumbled, then fell lifeless. Silence descended, chilling and absolute, broken only by the whimpering of a horse. The remaining men, stunned, looked from their fallen leader to the brush, then to Silas, who stood satchel in hand, his gun still smoking. From the thicket emerged a lone figure, a gaunt man with a patch over one eye and a worn marshal's star pinned to his vest. It was Marshal Thompson. He had followed them. John Blackwood. Marshal Thompson said, his voice flat, but there was no malice in it, only grim determination. "The bounty on you is for robbery. The murder was attributed to your gang, but not directly to you. But harboring an outlaw and resisting arrest, that's still a hanging offense." He looked from Silas to the dead Crowley, then to the terrified Serena. "Looks like I got my man. And a bonus." Serena stumbled towards Silas, her legs like jelly. "He saved us, Marshal. He saved my children. Crowley was going to kill us all." Silas stepped forward, placing the satchel at his feet. "She speaks the truth, Marshal. Crowley was after these maps. Maps to a gold mine. Jedediah Stone's maps. He entrusted them to me before he died. I never wanted a part of any of this." He looked Thompson dead in the eye. "I was trying to go straight. This family. They gave me a reason." Marshal Thompson eyed the satchel, then Silas, then Serena, her hand protectively on her swollen belly. He was a lawman, but he had a sense of justice beyond the letter of the law. He saw the truth in their eyes. He saw a man who had been given a chance at redemption and who had taken it. "These maps," Thompson mused, kicking the satchel with his boot. "They're worth a fortune, I reckon." "More than a fortune," Silas said quietly. "They're a legacy. Jedediah wanted them to go to his kin if they ever turned up. He left a will to that effect in Fort Hays." Thompson nodded slowly. "Tell you what, Blackwood, there's still a bounty, but a dead outlaw ain't much good to anyone, and you just saved a marshal's life whether you meant to or not. Crowley would have shot me dead." He looked at the remaining members of Crowley's gang, who now stood frozen, unsure what to do. "You men throw down your weapons. You're under arrest. The rest of you ride out, and don't ever come back this way." The gang members, leaderless and demoralized, slowly complied. "As for you, Blackwood," Thompson continued, turning back to Silas, "there's a circuit judge coming through Fort Hays next month. We'll have a talk. I'll make sure your testimony about Crowley and the maps is heard. But you're still coming with me." "For now." Serena gasped. "No. You can't take him." Silas put a hand on her arm. "It's all right, Serena. This is the only way this ends clean. For all of us. At least they know the truth about me now." He looked at her, a profound gratitude in his eyes. "You saved my life. Now let me try and save yours for good." He knelt, picked up the satchel and handed it to Serena. "These belong to you now, to your children. Jedediah trusted me to protect them, and now I trust you. This could change everything for you, for your family." Just then, from inside the cabin, a small, tentative wail broke the silence. A baby's cry. Serena's eyes widened, then she clutched her belly. "Oh no," she whispered, a new kind of panic rising. "The baby. It's coming." Marshal Thompson, despite his hardened exterior, looked startled. He glanced at Silas, then at the shack. "Well, I reckon the judge can wait a few hours. Looks like we got a more pressing matter on our hands." He let out a sigh, then motioned to one of the captured outlaws. "You, get some water boiling, and someone get clean cloths. We're about to have a new citizen in these parts." And so in the aftermath of a bloody gunfight amidst the dust and the echoes of violence, the raw, beautiful miracle of birth began. Silas, the notorious outlaw, helped Marshal Thompson prepare his hands, so recently lethal, now gentle and focused. Serena, the resilient widow, found her world shattered by a brutal truth now expanded by an unexpected act of grace, and the imminent arrival of a new life that symbolized both the end of one chapter and the fragile, precious beginning of another. The maps to the Spanish mine, now in her possession, held the key to a future beyond her wildest dreams, a future intrinsically linked to the outlaw who had stumbled into her life and profoundly altered its course. The birth was long and arduous, a testament to Serena's unwavering resilience. With Silas Marshal Thompson, and even a reluctant, surprisingly helpful outlaw named Jeb, assisting a new life entered the world. A healthy baby boy, small but strong, arrived with a cry that cut through the lingering tension of the gunfight, a beacon of innocence in the dust-choked aftermath. Serena, exhausted but radiant, held her newborn close, tracing the soft contours of his face. "His name is John," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, looking at Silas, a silent acknowledgement of his pivotal role in this unexpected miracle. John Samuel. Marshal Thompson, for all his stern demeanor, had softened considerably in the face of new life. He waited patiently, ensuring mother and child were stable, before finally and regretfully taking Silas into custody. It was a somber departure, heavy with unspoken promises and lingering fear. Eliza and Thomas. Their initial fear of the gunfight replaced by the awe of their new brother, now fully aware of the stranger's true name and the danger he represented, clung to Silas, their little faces tear-streaked and confused. "I'll be back," Silas promised, his voice rough with emotion, holding Thomas tight, then ruffling Eliza's hair. His eyes, dark and intense, met Serena's over the children's heads. "And I'll clear my name, for all of us." It was a vow, whispered like a prayer into the vast, indifferent prairie. Serena watched him ride away with the marshal, a profound emptiness settling in her heart that mirrored the vastness of the land around them. He was gone, carried away by the relentless tide of justice, but he had left more than just a baby and the heavy satchel of maps. He had left behind a sense of purpose, a fierce hope that had been all but extinguished, and an undeniable shift in her own strength. The quiet, desperate widow who had knelt beside a dying man was no more. In her place stood a woman tempered by fire, capable of facing the unknown. The next few weeks were a blur of recovery and preparation, fueled by an urgency Serena hadn't known she possessed. With the help of Eliza, who now moved with a new sense of maturity, Serena meticulously packed the few belongings that truly mattered: the worn quilts, the few pieces of crockery, the precious family Bible. She sold what little livestock she had left, a few scrawny chickens and a goat, to old man Abernathy, their nearest neighbor, explaining only that she was going to Fort Hayes to settle some family business. She clutched the satchel of maps like a sacred trust, its weight a constant reminder of the incredible burden and potential blessing Silas had bestowed upon her. In Fort Hays, a bustling, dusty town that now seemed both daunting and full of opportunity, she found Jedediah Stone's lawyer, a kindly but initially skeptical man named Phileas Croft. He was a meticulous man, with spectacles perched on his nose and a penchant for order. When Serena, a dusty, worn figure with a newborn bundled close and two wide-eyed children clinging to her skirts, presented the maps and explained their provenance, he was utterly astonished. His usual professional composure cracked, revealing a flicker of raw wonder. Jedediah's will, a dusty, almost forgotten document, indeed stipulated that should the maps ever surface, they were to be given to his closest living relative, his grandniece, Elara Stone, if she could be found within a year. But if no direct kin could be found, or if they failed to claim the maps within a year, they were to be entrusted to a person of true character and unwavering compassion, to be used for the betterment of the community as determined by the Fort Hays Town Council. Phileas Croft conducted a thorough, albeit brief, search. There was no grandniece Elara. Jedediah Stone had died a lonely man, his family scattered or long gone. The maps and their immense potential now fell under the purview of the second clause of the will. The Fort Hays Town Council, a collection of skeptical merchants, weary farmers, and a few pompous dignitaries, initially dismissed Serena as a deluded frontier woman, another wild tale from the untamed territories. Her story seemed too incredible, too fantastical. But then Marshal Thompson, a man known for his integrity and quiet authority, stepped forward. He recounted the harrowing tale of the gunfight at the Miller homestead, of John Blackwood's true actions in defending Serena and her children from Bartholomew Crowley's brutal gang. He spoke of Serena's own courage, her surprising shot, and how Blackwood had entrusted the maps to her, a testament to his profound faith in her character. The council members, seeing the marshal's unwavering conviction and beginning to understand the immense potential windfall the maps represented, agreed, albeit grudgingly, to hear her out. Serena, standing before them with her newborn son John Samuel at her breast, and Eliza holding her hand, surprisingly confident and resolute, eloquently argued for Silas's innocence regarding the murder charge. She spoke not of a notorious outlaw, but of a man transformed of his quiet care for her family, his gentle interactions with her children, and his genuine desire for a new honorable life. She spoke of the desperate choices people made in a harsh world, and the difference between true evil and a man trying to outrun a past he regretted. A week later, the fate of John Silas Blackwood was decided. He stood before Judge Elias Thorne, a stern but fair man, known for his unwavering commitment to justice. Marshal Thompson testified, giving a balanced, factual account that underscored Blackwood's defensive actions. Then Serena, clutching the satchel of maps, stepped forward. Her voice, clear and resonant, filled the courtroom as she spoke passionately, recounting how Blackwood had saved her children, helped her deliver her baby, and fought not for the gold, but to protect the maps and their rightful purpose. She presented the maps carefully, unrolling them on the judge's bench, revealing intricate faded markings that clearly pointed to a specific location. The maps led to a small, isolated canyon deep within the Forgotten Territories, southwest of Fort Hays, rumored for generations to hold a forgotten Spanish gold mine. The council, still cautious, but now undeniably intrigued, sent a small, heavily armed expedition. Within days, the reports flooded back. The mine was real. Not a legendary motherlode that would make Fort Hays a new metropolis overnight, but a significant vein of high-grade ore, enough to change the fortunes of the struggling prairie town, to provide a steady income for generations. The judge, moved by the emotional testimony, the undeniable evidence of the mine's existence, and the clear distinction between Blackwood's actions and Crowley's malice, made a landmark ruling. John Blackwood was acquitted of the murder charge, the blame squarely placed on Bartholomew Crowley, whose death at the hands of Marshal Thompson was deemed self-defense. The robbery charge was significantly reduced to an accessory after the fact, given his forced involvement and subsequent efforts to protect the maps. He was sentenced to 2 years hard labor, a harsh but not insurmountable punishment in the territorial prison, with a strong recommendation for early release based on good behavior. It was a second chance, hard won, and dearly paid for. As for the maps, the Fort Hays Town Council, inspired by Serena's compelling story and the undeniable potential for their struggling town, officially established the Jedediah Stone Community Trust. The proceeds from the mine would be meticulously managed and used for the betterment of the community. Within months, construction began on a proper, sturdy schoolhouse, replacing the dilapidated one-room shack. A well-equipped clinic, a beacon of hope, in a land where illness often meant death, was planned. Roads were improved. A telegraph line was finally installed, connecting Fort Hays to the wider world. And the town buzzed with a newfound prosperity and optimism. Serena Miller, the resilient widow from the remote homestead, was appointed one of the key trustees of the Jedediah Stone Community Trust. A surprising choice given her humble background, but one that Marshal Thompson championed fiercely, recognizing her innate integrity and pragmatism. 2 years later, Fort Hays was a changed town, vibrant and growing. The new school stood proudly on a hill, its windows gleaming, filled with the eager chatter of children, including Eliza and Thomas, who were now thriving, their faces no longer etched with the shadows of hardship. A small but well-equipped clinic offered medical care to the scattered homesteaders, saving countless lives. Roads were well maintained, and the town square, once a dusty patch, was now a lively hub of commerce and community gatherings. Serena with baby John, Samuel now a sturdy, curious toddler, and her older children blossoming, was a respected figure, a testament to resilience, quiet strength, and unwavering hope. She occasionally traveled to other towns, advocating for other remote communities, sharing the story of the trust, and subtly the story of the man who helped make it possible. And then one crisp autumn morning, as the leaves turned to fiery golds and reds, a lone rider approached the Miller homestead, which Serena had decided to keep. It was still humble, a small beacon in the vast prairie, but now well-maintained, its fences strong, its barn newly roofed, a testament to new beginnings and hard-won peace. The rider dismounted, his movements stiff but familiar, a silhouette against the rising sun. It was Silas, John Blackwood, his eyes, though still carrying the shadow of his past, a quiet wisdom forged in hardship, and the bitter lessons of a prison cell held a new light, a quiet strength that had been forged in hardship and redeemed by compassion. He was leaner, perhaps, but his presence was more grounded, more truly his own. He had served his time, honored his word, and he had returned. Serena, standing on the porch, a wide, unbidden smile gracing her lips, watched him approach, her heart swelling with an emotion she hadn't dared to name, a quiet joy that transcended words. Eliza and Thomas. Older now, their faces alight with recognition and pure delight, ran to greet him. Their shouts of Uncle Silas, echoing across the prairie, a sound of homecoming. Baby John, Samuel, now a curious and robust little boy, crawled eagerly towards him, his eyes wide with innocent wonder at this familiar yet new presence. Silas knelt, embracing the children, a rare, gentle smile lighting his face. His gaze finally met Serena's, a deep, silent understanding passing between them. "I told you I'd be back," he said, his voice rough with emotion, a promise fulfilled. "You did," she replied, her voice soft, filled with an emotion that was both relief and profound affection. "Welcome home, John." He stayed, not as an outlaw nor merely as a helper, but as a partner. He worked the land with a wisdom and strength born of hard-won experience. He helped oversee the mine's operation, ensuring its ethical management, and serving as an unspoken guardian of the Jedediah Stone Community Trust, ensuring its legacy continued to benefit the people of Fort Hays. He became a true father figure to Eliza and Thomas, teaching them lessons of honesty, hard work, and the importance of looking out for one another. Lessons instilled not by words, but by example. He watched John Samuel grow a quiet joy in his eyes, knowing that this little boy represented the true beginning of his own new redeemed life. The dying cowboy had indeed changed their lives forever. He hadn't just saved them from immediate peril. He had brought them stability, prosperity, and a future they could only have dreamed of. He had found his own redemption, not in escaping his past, but in facing it, enduring its consequences, and in dedicating himself to the family and community that had offered him a second precious chance. His was a testament to the fact that a past, no matter how dark, does not have to define a person's future. Serena and Silas, once a desperate widow and a hunted outlaw, built a life together. Not just a homestead, but a family, a true home, and a lasting legacy. Their story became a legend whispered across the prairie, growing with each passing year, a tale of unexpected kindness, of a second chance in a harsh world, and of how the most profound changes often arrive, not on the back of a white horse, but in the dust-streaked boots of a dying stranger, bringing with him the seeds of an entirely new, extraordinary destiny. Their love, forged in the crucible of adversity, became as enduring as the prairie itself. And so the vast, silent prairie, often seen as a place of unforgiving loneliness, became the stage for an extraordinary transformation. Serena, Eliza, and Thomas, through an act of profound human compassion, found an unlikely savior in John Silas Blackwood. His dark past, once a looming threat, became the catalyst for a future brighter than they could have ever imagined, proving that even in the harshest of landscapes, redemption can bloom, and true family is often found in the most unexpected places. This isn't just a story of survival. It's a powerful testament to the enduring power of hope, the courage to embrace the unknown, and the incredible ripple effect of a single selfless act. If this journey through the Wild West captivated your heart, please hit that like button. Share this tale with fellow story lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more true-to-life dramas that will leave you breathless